Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for checking into our Traded Black podcast. It's Monday afternoon, 4 o'clock. We've been teeing this up from late last week, and here we are here today. Big podcast coming up. Probably the two biggest CEOs, the biggest CEO in Canada, Beena Goldenberg from Organigram, and then perhaps the biggest CEO in the U.S., Boris Jordan, joining us from CURLF to talk about their latest earnings, among many other things in the cannabis industry, such as the hemp topic. We'll talk about some of the stuff that Boris was quoting on today as far as un-American and the licensing fees that the governor, Catherine Hochul, is basically going to be implementing on cannabis companies, which is a bit of a head scratcher, to say the least. And as well with Beena, we're going to have their first full quarter of Motif earnings. Basically, they reported this today here, the earnings report. It was a great print. So let's find out more on what these numbers mean and some of the conversations she's had with the new Liberal Party that was elected into office a couple of weeks ago with that election and the excise tax. So with that, let's welcome in AV here on a Monday. Big one coming up here today. And we're finally here.
It's good. It's going to be nice to dive into Organigram that outperformed on the quarter. We had CURLF with now Boris making the headlines in the New York Post.
I saw that.
To really juice it up. And the Panthers thrashed the Maple Leafs last night, which was great. So we defended home ice, and now we go back to Toronto for Game 5.
Oh, man, that was contested. I'm sure everybody in Southern Florida has Max Domi on their
Domi's a dead man.
Yeah, I saw that tweet. But I'm sure a lot of people didn't like that hit at the end. But you know what? As a Toronto Maple Leaf fan, I'm not saying I like the hit, but I like the juice at the end because they got to come up with some life, because the beginning of that game, they looked a little flat. But, man, you're playing the defending champs. Get ready, right?
The whole game. It was physical. They dominated them. They were up. I think they had 32 shots on goal to like 9.
Yeah.
At one point in the second period. Bob played well. Wall played the game of his life.
Yeah.
He looked like the second coming of Patrick Waugh.
I think the refs had Florida Panthers jerseys under those black and white striped shirts.
That's BS. Those were penalties. Those were penalties.
There was one hit, though, that a Leaf player got from behind in front of the net early in the game that was not called. But whatever. We'll save that stuff for another day. It's earnings Monday, and like I said, perhaps the biggest CEO from Canada on Beena Goldenberg from Organigram and Boris Jordan from CURLF. So Beena is now joining us. Good to see you and happy Monday. We're talking hockey in the playoffs, which I'm sure you're in Toronto, and I'm sure everybody, Hockey Nation, is talking about the game last night. And it's a great time of year. For nobody that's been to Toronto, I always found the springtime is the best time of the year to live in that city, is it not?
It is. First of all, it was a beautiful weekend, but you've got hockey going, you got baseball. I mean, the Blue Jays had a tough run, but they really had a good weekend out in Seattle, so can't complain about that either.
There you go. Well, you're in Canada, you have the overcast and cold, and all of a sudden when the sun finally breaks through the clouds, it's like new rebirth of life in spring, and especially in Toronto, and everybody's happy again. And I'm sure there's a lot of people happy based on your latest earnings report that you announced here this morning. So let's dive into that, where you posted record $65.6 million in net revenue this quarter. It's up 74% year over year. Can you break down, I guess, some of the primary contributors to that growth and how much was organic versus driven by, as we all know, the Motif acquisition? Because you've been on in the past, and we're looking forward to this latest earnings report because finally we got a full quarter with Motif finally reported on it.
Yeah, so absolutely. So first I'll say, what's really interesting, you talked about our net revenue, but our gross shipped sales revenue moved past the $100 million mark to $102 million. So that was really a tremendous breakthrough for us. A tougher question, how much is related to Motif versus Organigram? Because as we've combined the two businesses, we've made decisions to discontinue some of the SKUs in our Organigram legacy brands to replace them with Motif brands. We're really operating the portfolio together, but strong organic growth in the recreational business. So with that, whether it's Organigram or Motif, we've grown faster than the market. So we're pretty pleased with that. On the market grew 4%, and so even without the considering the acquisition, we grew faster than the market. So pretty pleased with our performance. Strong, one of the things that unfortunately a lot of historical acquisitions happen in Canada where companies did an acquisition and they lost market share and they lost the volume. We're growing, we're holding on to it, we're optimizing it, so we feel pretty confident with what happened. So record-breaking net revenue. And then really our adjusted EBITDA came in at 4.9 million for the quarter compared to a loss of $1 million in the same quarter last year. So a swing of 6 million from last year. And, when you think about it year to date, we're at 6.3 million in adjusted EBITDA. Our full year last year was 8.4 million.
Yeah.
And we're just heading into our key seasonality, right? Key seasonality, this business starts at 420 and runs all the way through Labor Day. So we expect to see really strong performance in Q3 and Q4 to build on top of what we just announced in Q2.
I know that you had announced that the cost savings were actually to the tune of 15 million versus 10. Was that synergies that were found post-acquisition? Was it leaning out the team and deploying your own human capital that were already at Organigram? Or how did you achieve that? Because it's almost a 50% increase.
Yes, no, absolutely. So the original plan had the SG&A savings as for the combined team that was already contemplated. What we're really seeing in this extra $5 million of synergies is cost synergies. So as we started to look at their operations and our operations and how the two fit together, more and more cost savings have come to light. We have invested some capital in their facility to increase capacity, their hydrocarbon extraction capacity, and it increases both THCA isolate and THC distillate at more cost-effective prices, which gives us an opportunity for further business-to-business sales. So we're pretty excited about that. That's incremental to what we originally contemplated. But there is tremendous benefits of the centralized London warehouse, where we will move inventory out of Moncton and we will move it into in London, Ontario, shipping to Ontario and Western Canada out of that site. And what that does is it cuts freight costs, improves our turnaround, puts us as a tier 1 supplier to the OCS, because now we can turn around in 4 hours, and all of a sudden that ramps up our sales. Big opportunity to just drive efficiencies. And so we're pretty excited about that. And certainly the increase in the synergy realization, which we will see not only back half of this year, but some of them, the London facility will be fully built out by the end of the fiscal. So into next year, we're going to start to see that realization. But that will roll into our gross margin on top of the savings that we'll already see from SG&A savings.
How big is that facility in London?
That's a good question. I know that the facility could take all of our inventory. You know what? I don't know the number.
Don't worry about the size, but I just if someone were to say it's a great idea and it makes sense, but why was that decision made? I could understand why it's being made, but why wasn't it done sooner? But now that it is, is it because of this is where the company was basically founded and a lot of its operations were more on the East Coast? What was the rationale in basically making that decision?
So we had all of our founding facility was in Moncton. That's where our distribution was. Obviously, 14 hours to get to Ontario from Moncton driving. So it's not a great location. So we've talked about centralizing. We actually moved some inventory to our Winnipeg facility to supply Western Canada to get faster. But the nice thing about the London facility, which Motif had leased out, but they only had a very small licensed footprint in that facility. And as we looked at it, we said, let's license the whole facility. Let's change our whole distribution network. Let's look at how do we do this thing more efficiently across the country. We'll continue to supply Atlantic Canada and Quebec out of Moncton and move everything else into London.
Smart.
What's really interesting is as we're looking at potential changes that could happen from government regulations, and you mentioned this earlier, but the opportunity of going to a single national stamp, if that happens, and it's something that we've been talking to the government about, right now we have to stamp, every province needs a different excise stamp. If we go to a single national stamp, then the streamlining of our operations where everything gets stamped as it's produced, gets into London and gets fulfilled as orders come in, rather than right now, we have to sit on the inventory and wait for orders to come in and then excise. And so you're double handling all your products. It's totally inefficient and it's to no benefit of anybody, right? Now the government, we could report to the government what we sell into every province regardless. So this is an antiquated stamp program that came from the tobacco industry. It's not necessary. The alcohol industry has one national digital stamp. It's the opportunity to streamline it, and that just makes our London operation even more efficient when that goes in.
Makes sense.
Right now, a big part of your story has been the international exposure with the Sanity Group. This quarter, however, when you go through the revenue, I think it's about 6% of your overall revenue, and you're diving deep into your domestic market in Canada, which you're seeing category growth quarter over quarter. How are you thinking about the economics of the business moving forward, and where do you see that international segment growing, let's say, a couple of quarters down the road? Because right now, I'm assuming you want to cater to that Canadian consumer in terms of bandwidth of product as you're developing that relationship, and the consumers obviously being sticky towards Organigram branded product.
Absolutely. So important that we do both. Manage our domestic market and support our brands in Canada, because that is the basis of our leadership position. We don't want to give that up. And brands do take time to build. And, if you get a stickier brand, you're going to have something to rely on down the road. So we have to keep building that. So absolutely, that's important. We sold $6.1 million of sales to international markets this quarter. We expect the back half of the year, our international sales will grow further than the front half of the year. And that's because you have to, as you sell into Germany, you sell into Australia, you have to establish the strains, you have to do stability work, you have to get the patients on those strains, and then orders come in and repeat orders come in, and that grows the business. So getting in there and having a portfolio of strains that the doctors are prescribing right now, that's important for us. That is happening. We expect that will continue to grow. In addition, we expect to get our EU GMP certification. That's to be able to ship directly into the EU. And that will not increase demand, but it will speed up product getting to the end market. Right now, we ship product to a converter. It sits and waits till a converter makes it EU compliant and sends it on. Well, the news is out in the marketplace that there could be regulations against these converters down the road. And so having the investment behind getting certified for EU GMP means we could ship directly to the market, get product turning faster, and at a higher price. So back to your percentage of revenue, the prices will go up because you're taking out the middleman. That'll also increase. So kilograms will go up, pricing will go up, strong demand. I mean, Germany continues to ask for more product, and we keep building our capacity. We announced investing $16 million in additional CapEx to expand our capacity in our Moncton facility. We're just completing the first round of CapEx. That's the upgraded LED lights in our facility. Should drive better yields, give us another 7,000 kilograms of flower to sell internationally. And then a second project, once London is up and running, we move inventory out of Moncton into London and have room for 9 more grow rooms, again, another 7,000 kilos. So within the course of the next 18 months, we'll have 14,000 extra kilos to not only sell internationally, but obviously you get scale, you get the benefit of that leverage, and it will flow through to the bottom line because our fixed costs stay the same.
So what I'm seeing here is that, look, there's a tremendous exporting opportunity for a lot of Canadian LPs, and especially yours itself. And then we can't forget, obviously, about this domestic market, like you said, opening up this London facility. I've been to the East Coast. There's no shortcut to Ontario because there's only so many roads that were built, and it takes time, and it's 14 hours and all that and more. But when I look at this right now, like you were saying that you're getting rid of some of your legacy brands and just, prioritizing more on Motif. So in some ways it's almost working smarter, not necessarily harder. So, as it stands right now, like you're basically leading the Canadian market in multiple categories, like vapes, pre-rolls, milled flowers. So what strategies outside of what I just outlined, I guess you're using to defend the market share as new LPs attempt to scale up as well?
Yeah, so really interesting, a couple of things. It's a highly fragmented market. We've often said top 3 players are only 27% of the category. But what's interesting when you get into things outside of flower or traditional pre-rolls, when you get into hash, infused pre-rolls, vapes, the flavor-forward milled flower, all of a sudden you have, those are where the top 3 players are in the 40 to 70% of the market. Right? These are categories where you need more than a little patch to grow some flower. you actually need to put in scale and productivity, and this is where innovation becomes more defensible. You're creating barriers. And so those are the opportunities to grow and defend our share in those categories, yet still be able to fight in the very highly fragmented flower market, right? Because we have a great facility that we could get low cost flower out of. But we are growing that business, and that's part of what brings me to the Collective Project acquisition that we announced that closed March 31st, so the last day of the quarter. So no impact of Collective Project in our Q2 results that we reported. But what we like about the beverage category is, again, higher barriers of entry. This is a category that is underpenetrated, but we see big opportunities coming because we know that there is more consumer adoption. The younger cohort are drinking less alcohol, are interested in these cannabis beverages. And in Canada, we hope to be able to get cannabis beverages outside of the retail channel and into, beside alcohol or into on-premise, into bars. And we're having positive conversations with governments about, with some of the provincial governments about those moves. So we're excited about that. But even more so, hemp-derived THC beverages in the U.S. market. This category is exploding. Just recently, there was an article in Wall Street Journal. It was on Fox News. There was another article in CNN. It's going mainstream. It's out there. It's big. It's going to grow. Our current estimate right now is the market's about $1 billion in sales, but we expect it in 3 years to be $4 billion in sales.
Okay. Wow.
And this is, we know that these products are available where consumers are shopping now, in liquor stores, in grocery stores, and convenience stores. And it's available in direct-to-consumer, so online direct-to-consumer. That's the big opportunity on the team.
Correct.
Is that $4 billion in the U.S.?
In the U.S., that's right.
Yeah. That's the thing. That's the thing with the hemp products. And I was saying this to someone the other day. I can get gummies and beverages shipped right to my door automatically on subscription every month. I don't have to go to the dispensary. I don't even have to leave my house. They just keep showing up. That means that those two form factors, no matter what, should be getting market share eaten out of them that are currently residing within the dispensary. As far as the D9 beverages go in the States, are you leveraging that product in any sort of, let's say, marketing research and development around data and developing relationships with the consumer?
Sure. Well, listen, this is the big question right now is how big. There's no data, no really good data right now in the market. Certainly, as we have our direct-to-consumer website, we'll start to get some of that data. We have a distributor called Functional that is distributing to North Carolina, South Carolina, Texas, Florida, and they distribute for several brands. And so they have access to a lot more data. And this is, we need to build a database to understand what's happening with consumers. But I think what's really interesting is there was an article, Top 10 Liquors out of Minnesota was saying that 15% of their sales are THC Delta-9 beverages. So every single one of the retailers that sell alcohol are talking about how beer is going down and cannabis-infused beverages are going up. So this shift is happening, and it's an exciting space to be in.
Well, are you planning on taking Prime Minister Carney to the Leaf Panthers game on Wednesday night and schmooze him a little bit? Because where do things sit after this controversial election that took place? And look, he's now Prime Minister. And I know he's got, as we continue to say in this industry, there's bigger things that they're concerned about right now. But when the opportunity presents itself, is there any kind of direction or feedback that you can share with our audience based on the political landscape in Canada that's related to the excise tax that we might to see things done in a different light, hopefully?
Yes, I'll tell you that in the last couple of months, obviously, because there was an election going on in the background, there really wasn't an opportunity to go to Ottawa, but we put a lot of time and effort in meeting with provincial governments to try to push this forward. A lot of time a day from Premier Holt out of New Brunswick, who's pushing our agenda forward. We're the fourth largest private employer in New Brunswick. So we have a little bit of power there, and we're leveraging it. And she's liberal and pushing the liberal agenda forward. So we're happy to have her in our court. Equally, we've had conversations with the Manitoba government, where we obviously have our gummy facility in Winnipeg. And so we've been pushing from the provincial side. We did have some meetings with Krista Freeland, who is very focused on that whole interprovincial barriers. So this is where that stamp that I talked about earlier, the opportunity of getting that through. They have publicly declared Canada Day, so July 1st, as when they hope to get these interprovincial barriers sort of addressed. So we've got fingers crossed on that one. But excise reform, I think this is a longer time frame, and we'll keep pushing. We believe it's the right thing, but anybody who's going to take taxes down at a time where they're trying to fund things, that's a tougher sell.
Well, tell Christia Freeland she's more than welcome to come on our podcast anytime to talk a little bit more, and I'd be more than happy. And we're not going to attack her. We just want to learn more and bring some awareness towards the overall industry. But listen, overall, great earnings report. And I really like, it's great to see some success, yourself and other companies included. But this Canadian domestic market, it's like everything that's old is new again. And it's great to see. And then let's not kid ourselves. We've talked about the EU opportunity for quite some time. And finally, it's here. And first step is obviously Germany, followed by the UK, and then we're onwards and upwards. But tell the team we say hi, great work, and most importantly, let's keep in touch, okay?
Great. Well, thank you very much.
I appreciate it, Beena.
Congrats on the quarter.
Yeah, nice little job there, and I don't blame her. Some of these legacy products, it's just like, it just works smarter, not harder. And if you got a brand that you acquired and it sells, then time to keep improving margins. All right, let's segue now into our next part of the show, from the whole hemp industry and the Florida side to growth in the European market to being quoted as un-American, the New York Post. Let's welcome in perhaps the biggest name in the cannabis industry, Mr. Boris Jordan. What is going on, my friend? I think you're on mute. All good. All good. Can you hear us? He can hear us.
Just found it. Thanks.
There you go. How are you?
How are you, sir?
I'm good. How you guys been? It's been a while.
Good. You've been busy the last 24 to 48 hours. That's for sure.
Since August, I've been busy.
Yeah, I'm sure
Since
you've been
I stepped into the role as CEO. Let me tell you something. There's a big difference between being a chairman and a CEO, and I didn't appreciate the difference, at least at Curaleaf.
You can't tell. Was the hair? I think the hair was gray before you actually stepped back in as being CEO. So you look the same.
Yeah. Once it goes gray, the next move is bald. And that's why I got a cap on.
Yeah. I had Tim Seymour on a couple of weeks ago, and he was talking to us. He's like, "Look, you guys are younger. Well, you are, Anthony. Not so much you, Shad. And it's just like the hair is getting more gray. So you can definitely see. Each time you see me, it's just it's inevitable. But listen, lots to talk about here today. We want to talk about hemp. We obviously want to talk about your latest numbers. We want to talk about what's going on in New York, because I know that you were very vocal and opinionated on that, and rightfully so. But let's first dive into earnings. You reported $310 million in revenue and a 50% adjusted gross margin in Q1. That's a 250 basis points year-over-year improvement. So in your own words, I guess, what drove that margin gain in really a declining top-line environment right now that we're seeing in the industry?
Listen, there's some things that are industry related and there's some things that are Curaleaf related, right? Okay. Specifically to Curaleaf. So I on the industry side, there's no question we saw 13.5% price compression year over year in all of our markets. So really substantial numbers that you can't get away from that. It is what it is. That's the marketplace. So that obviously affects overall numbers. But I think what's really impressive, at least, and since I've started, is that we had a significant down quarter, which was part seasonal, part related to the markets, and part related to stuff that we're doing. But we still were able to grow our margins. So on a significant fall in sales, we still were able to grow our margin. And I think that's a testament to all the different things that we're doing at Curaleaf right now to bring the company back into a leadership position on profitability. And so I can just say that we're moving along. We've got a huge amount of initiatives, and as I said, I think the last time I spoke to you, when I came in August of last year, it wasn't because things were going great. It's not like I wanted a CEO job. I was semi-retired, managing my investments. And I came in because I wasn't happy with the way things were developing at Curaleaf. And so I came in and my main focus was, number one was balance sheet, clean up the balance sheet.
Yep.
Number two was, clean up the markets, get out of markets that are just not going to make money that we overexpanded into. And then was really focusing on our products. And two things on our product side was, get out of products that don't make money. And two was Curaleaf did not play at all in the premium category, particularly in flower. We did in vape, but we didn't in flower. And, focus on flower. So we're there now. And you're going to see over the next couple of quarters, like to turn around a company this size, particularly in agriculture, because you're growing, takes time. You can't do it very quickly. And what we did is we bought a genetics house out in California called Black Dark Art. And, I built a specially purpose facility in Arizona to test all those genetics before they get sent out into the field, into the grow facilities around the commercialized grow facilities around the country. And now we have what we call our all-star strains in all of our markets, right? Some don't have the full suite yet. There's 6 all-star strains. Some have 2, some have 3. They'll all have 6 by July, but in quantity, and they'll always be available on the menu. And what we've seen, interestingly enough, our customers at the moment, we just really launched this in March. So we've seen our customers start to trade up. So people that were buying our mid-tier brand, which is Find, have now moved into our all-star strains under Grassroots brand.
Okay.
And so we haven't seen more steps in the stores yet, but what we've seen is them trading up. So we're getting more margin for the same amount of dollars because they're buying the more expensive product rather than buying the cheaper product, which we're getting more margin.
Is that All-Star Strains program materializing as the Reef brand in Florida? And how is the market looking in Florida as far as dynamics and pricing?
So Florida is a very interesting case because, as you know, we don't have a wholesale business in Florida due to the nature of the verticality, right? So what we did in Florida is we had to even step a little further into brand development. So in Florida, for instance, our Reef brand is really focused on, it's different than the All-Star brand, All-Star strains. It's different in Grassroots All-Star strains. So in Florida right now, I think we've had 5 of the 6 All-Star strains. But I'm going to be honest with you, Anthony, we have a lot of work to do in Florida in flower, right? If we're going to be completely honest with ourselves, Curaleaf screwed itself in Florida in flower. We are very strong in vape, very strong in other formulated products. For instance, I think we're the largest gummy seller. But where we really missed out was in flower. And so we are coming back right now in a big way with our all-star strains. We got 5 of the 6 of them in market. We also created Reef. Reef is focused on citrus, fruity product, whereas All-Star is more of the high terpene, high potency products, right? That the market wants. So that stuff that's where we are on that, and that's now in market, and we're still selling through some of our older strains. And what you're going to see in the next literally couple of weeks is you're going to see a massive marketing campaign on now reintroducing Curaleaf with an admission of fucking up. Excuse the expression.
This is in Florida, Boris?
In Florida. And you're going to see a campaign that says, we're here now and we're playing for keeps in the premium category. That we're going to go after the premium market with a heavy campaign. And, we've got 2 other products that launch alongside these strains. We've also got the Anthem, which is right here. The Anthem brand, which is selling out like crazy across the country. We can't keep it in stock. Our biggest problem right now, we can't manufacture it fast enough.
I saw the packaging; it was fantastic.
Yeah, and the people and the infused is coming out July 1st. So this was the uninfused. We're also coming out with the Anthem infused, which is a completely new technology as well in terms of what we're doing. So all of that hits over the next. So this is work in progress, but I'm super pleased with what our focus on quality, our focus on premium products, which do still command premium price, because you do have consumers that want premium products, and they're prepared to pay for them.
Oh yeah,
That's what you got to play.
Have you thought about a marketing campaign of like doing a weekly segment with us called Anthem, and we play the American national anthem at the beginning? Because that's something we could work out after this podcast, if you'd like.
Well, given that we're in so many countries, we're gonna have to focus on Canada, on German anthem, UK. You know.
By the way, I saw the numbers. So some huge growth year over year in the international market. Anthony and I were in Washington last month, and we really got a chance to meet a lot of the European players. But it seems like the opportunity is now, which you guys have been talking about for quite some time, especially when you look at the political party in Germany and kept everything status quo, which was very welcoming. But, you know, it's opportunities now, would you not say, in Germany? And obviously those were some pretty impressive numbers when it came to year over year growth, was it not?
Yeah, listen, as I always said, we're very excited about it. I don't think for a change, we were actually early because it takes time to stand up a fully vertical operation. We're the only, I believe, if maybe some of the Canadians, but even like your last person was interviewing, right? They're just selling their product into the market. We're fully vertical. In other words, we have every aspect of the supply chain now within Curaleaf. So we grow, we process, we distribute. We have direct to consumer. We have our online businesses. We even have the medical clinics, which we're using as a way to push our brands into those markets. We have, as we announced today, we have the only EU GMP medically certified vape now in the market. So
wow.
Basically, I could go, if I wanted to be a real jerk about it, I could go to these countries and say, you no longer have to allow these other vapes to be sold because you now have one that's actually EU GMP certified. Because, you know, a lot of the vapes that are being sold today are actually illegal because they don't have the certification. So we now have the only certified vape. And for Europe, for Australia, for instance, just banned all imported vapes because they weren't EU GMP certified.
Interesting.
So we are now the only player globally that has that product. We've been working on it for 3 years to develop that product, and we can now offer that product in all of the European markets because it complies with their medical requirements.
As far as that product goes,
Europe is great.
As far as that product goes, do you foresee it finding its way into the U.S. market sooner or later down the road?
I mean, the U.S. doesn't have a requirement like that, so it doesn't give us an advantage in the U.S., right? We have, I mean, the largest selling vape in the United States is Brick, which is owned by us, right?
Yeah.
So it's the number one selling vape, not only device but also, oil. So so we already have that position in the U.S. and we don't have that certification. We don't need to. I mean, we could come out with a marketing campaign to say we have the safest vape cart, that passes all EU GMP, and that might work. But right now, our focus, to be honest, is to use that advantage in Europe, where it actually means something, and in Australasia, right? That's where it means something. So that's our goal. We made that announcement today. This has been long in the coming, and we're super excited about it. And I think it'll give us a major, because the vape category in Europe is very small, right? Mm-hmm. So gummies and flower are the main categories. Vape has been lagging, mainly because it's been frowned upon by the regulators because there was no device that was certified. Now that there's a device that is certified under EU GMP, we can now go in and go full bore, right? Up until now, they were kind of like, well, you can do it, but we don't really like it. It was sort of a position like that. Now we can really, and we have doctors that run these businesses. Don't forget, Europe is a different business than the US, right? Very different. It's a pharma medical business.
100%.
It's completely different, right? I mean, people that operate in this market have no idea what's going on.
That was the big takeaway that we got.
And as far as the European business unit goes, I know that you actually gave the revenue numbers this quarter. So I'm going to go forward. It's looking at about 140 million on an annualized run rate, grow over 10% of revenue. Are you giving any sort of guidance as it relates to the European business?
We did give guidance. We said we expect to do about 170 this year.
Okay.
In Europe and not on a run rate, on an annualized basis. So you're going to see pretty substantial acceleration in the second, third, and fourth quarters as the markets continue to expand. Okay. And obviously we're seeing very healthy, not only Germany, but up until I think even last quarter, I think UK was still the largest business for Curaleaf. It's now I think Germany's taking over here in the second quarter as the largest business. But the UK is a very strong market. It's a little bit over-regulated and it's a little stricter than Germany due to fact that Germany took it, the product off of their narcotics list. So it's a little easier now to access, but it's a strong market. And Poland is coming around. Poland was a strong market last year. It hit a major hiccup in the fourth quarter because they disallowed telemarketing in Poland. And so that literally collapsed sales in Poland for everybody. But we went in, we quickly pivoted and reacted, and we bought medical clinics. And so now we're back in business, and we're seeing sales start to accelerate here in the second quarter. So Poland is back on as a market. And obviously Australia, we had a major trip to Australia, and we have now for the first time shipped. We used to ship through our acquisition in Canada, Northern Green. We used to just ship flour, and then people would white label flour. Now we're in with our brands in Australia as of literally 2 weeks ago. So we signed a partnership with the largest distributor, and we're now bringing in Curaleaf branded products, and we're starting to sell them on the Australian market as well.
Has that been one of your major initiatives for turning the company around ever since you took the helm of CEO, is bringing in the brands and emphasizing the brands? Because, I mean, we're seeing trends with Anthem, Reef, Select is grown tremendously even throughout the hemp channels.
That nobody knows about yet, but it just launched in New York, and it's about to go countrywide, which I think will disrupt the whole vape industry. The whole vape industry is ACE. So I don't know if you guys know the history, but the history of vape is, if you remember when vape started out 10 years ago, it was like really dark brown, heavy vape oil. Then a bunch of guys, including Select on California, before I owned it, I was an investor, but before I owned it, for Curaleaf, they came out with the distillate, right? Which is CO2 derived distillate. It was like, a golden yellow, much cleaner oil, less carcinogens than the BHO oil. So so healthier. And our company was one of the pioneers in that. And now we've come up after 10 years and $15 million of, you may have probably remember this, Anthony, from years ago. I was talking about the aqueous technology, the water soluble technology. So we now have it at commercialization in 3 markets. After 15 minutes, so it's New York, Florida, and Massachusetts. We're going to take it nationally. I can tell you, I've got every brand in California calling me and saying, we want this oil. Like, give it to us wholesale. We want this oil. This is going to kill, because it is the cleanest, safest, no carcinogen oil in the market. There's nothing like it. Not only that, but the technology is so advanced that we have companies coming to us saying, we want to buy this technology. Mainstream companies that supply pharmaceuticals with extracted products are coming to us saying, can we get this technology? So we may actually go into partnership with one of the largest manufacturers of extraction technology in the world. We may go, because that's not my business, is to do this, right? We did this for our product, but we may even sell the extraction technology, take a royalty back, and then just have it for us for distribution in our products. So this is very exciting. It was launched in New York. We sold out both Anthem and Ace. We can't produce enough of it fast enough. It's going.
And I'm assuming since it's water soluble,
completely water extracted, and it's completely white. You can't even notice there's an oil in the cartridge. You can't even.
Is it less viscous and extend the life of the hardware? Is it less viscous and extends the life of the hardware?
You actually need a different kind of device for it. Except you can use regular 510 thread. But for instance, our current brick, which is the one we sell, the most popular vape cart in the country that we sell, our disposable that we sell, it's the 2 gram that we sell our regular distillate in. That device can't handle. It's a C-cell device. It can't handle the ACE oil. So we're coming out with Brick 2.0 in September, which will be able to also handle the ACE oil.
So you're putting your fingerprints. You're putting your fingerprints obviously in a lot. And it's pretty evident that from an operational standpoint, a lot of changes need to be made. You like the direction, obviously, of where the company is going, but these things do take time. From a capital market structure, we've talked about this with a lot of companies in the space right now. It's all about debt restructuring, the amount of debt that obviously needs to get paid off. We've had some people comment on here. What is the answer? Like, when you have people reaching out, asking these types of questions, what's your response to, like, pending debt? Are we talking about potentially restructuring this later on down the road? Like, what's your response to a lot of those people that are, I don't want to say concerned, but want to know more about it?
So listen, I think that there are companies in this space that one should be concerned about their debt loads.
Okay.
And then there's companies where I think you have to be less concerned, I didn't say not concerned, but less concerned. And I would put those as the top 5 players in the marketplace, right? So it's ourselves, TrueLeaf, GTI, Verano, and Cresco. I think, we don't see a problem in the refinancing of our debt. We still have, a year and 9 months till we have to refinance, until it matures. We are already in conversations with investors about it. We've received incredibly strong support.
Okay.
I have this whole second half of this week, I'm on calls with investors. Now, in our case, as I said, we have some flexibility. First of all, I don't really want to do anything until the second half of the year because there's still a call premium up until June 15th. So I'm not going to do anything now. So really, we'll go to market probably in the third quarter and close a refinancing, at least one part of it in the fourth quarter. Okay. The only reason I wouldn't do the whole thing this year is, and there's trade-offs to do it or not do it, is that I personally think interest rates are going down. Yeah. I think they're going to go down into next year. And I think that with that, I would rather get cheaper rates. So I'm thinking, since I got $460 million to refinance, I might do 50% this year or maybe 60% this year, and then just take a piece next year. So my blended rate,
you got time,
for the company would be lower. And so I'm trying to catch the flexibility. Now I have the benefit to do that because I think of all the MSOs, I've got the latest maturity on these. So it's December of 26. I think the next one before me is TrueLeaf at October of 26 or September of 26. But we're in December. So we have enough flexibility to be able to, tranche it, do some this year just to get a piece of it done and some next year. On the other hand, if the demand is strong and rates are okay, we might do the whole thing this year. We haven't made a decision, but I can tell you that we've gotten very substantial indication of interest from both existing lenders as well as new lenders to play in the refinancing.
So you're viewing this as you've got time, right?
CURLF has time. And, listen, I'm also a big holder of my debt, and I have been in every single debt we've issued. And that's, I think, makes people very comfortable because I've rolled every single time. And, when you got your founder coming in and writing a $50 million ticket for your debt, people like that.
Okay. Well said.
One of the things you've made the biggest waves in was hemp. You're one of the first to go in with the Select brand with the beverages and gummies. We've got the Palm Beach conversion of the Cannabis store. Obviously, it's been a growing part of the CURLF story. Kind of wanted to start with the conversion. What was the rationale for that, and what are you seeing currently out of that store? I'm actually going to be there Thursday.
Oh wow, I didn't know that.
We're shooting a segment within the store.
Yeah. I think. Well, I'll tell you something interesting that's going to happen. I don't know if this happens by Thursday, but it will happen eventually. So, the main reason I went into that store was it's all about the consumer, and I think that a lot of people in this industry, both in the regulated and non-regulated, do products, and they basically don't understand what the consumer actually wants. And so the best way to understand what the consumer wants is open up a store, put your products on the shelves with your competitors' products, and understand what the preferences of consumers are. Because what's great about hemp is we can do things we could never do in the regulated business. I can do tastings, I can do parties, I can do all these things that, for instance, Total Wine can do, but I can't do, right? So in the regulated business. So these are the kind of practice. So I wanted to, my first goal was, I want to understand what consumer preferences in hemp products are. That was number one. And number two is I'm noticing, and now especially, everybody criticized me when I opened the store because Florida was going to roll it back. Well, guess what? Florida didn't roll it back. Okay. I'm not going to tell you right now that I knew that. I didn't, call me lucky, but my purpose was, it was one store. It wasn't very expensive to do the conversion. And now that we've seen the response in that store, and we've seen where Florida's gone, and we also have very large stores in Florida, you're going to see us open up more. Because, for instance, I've got large stores in Florida. I can put a wall, and I got a hemp store and a regulated cannabis store right next to each other.
So is this all part of?
You can do that. You can do that with the not under the MMTC licenses.
Well, it's a different. I have to put a wall. And in many of my stores, I got such large stores in many locations, like in the big cities, I can easily do that. And I can have 2 stores because 2 different stores next to each other. And one is unregulated and one's regulated. And it's going to be an interesting, and I'm going to do this. And listen, we haven't made the decision on capital yet because we want to see how Arizona goes. I'm sorry, how Florida goes first. But our strategy is we want to have a flagship or 2 in every major metropolis in the country. So Austin, Texas, Dallas, Texas, Chicago, Illinois, right? You know, all the markets that allow these products, we want to have 1, maybe 2 hemp stores that we can showcase our own products as well as sell others and keep learning about the consumer.
Yeah, of course.
Do you foresee ever getting into THCA flower or sticking into the beverage, gummies, and the finished products?
So that's why you're a little early into the Florida shop, is that for me, the most important thing with THCA flower is the COAs and the supply chain has to be one, just like our beverages. And I've always said this, Anthony, you know, that has to be 100% clean. It cannot violate any rules. So I believe we have found a supply chain and we are going to have THCA flower because Florida allows it in our stores in Florida.
Do you think any of your competitors in Florida are going to start going down this business strategy, or think this is going to be unique to Curaleaf?
You know, I like to think that, you know, so far, you know, nobody followed me into Europe, and I'm happy about that. But everybody followed me into the beverage category. So who knows?
How is the beverage category doing? Because to be honest, I think your brand sticks the best with Select on those beverages when you're looking at them at the point of
so Anthony, we did a test start last year, and what we learned from that test start, and again, you know, I didn't have my own stores back then, so I had to do it in the market. We realized that, you know, we could have made the products a little bit better, so we got a lot of customer feedback. So we redid all of our seltzer line, and we launched it. It was a test. It was a pilot program. We launched the full commercialized program in January of this year. And I have to say, it's doing very well. We're very pleased. As you know, we don't give numbers until we reach 100 million on any business. So it's going to be a while till we give numbers on our drinks business.
Yeah.
Hopefully sooner rather than later, but it is what it is. But we're in over 100 locations with Total Wine. We have just signed up 6 major distributors to distribute our product nationally. We are about to announce the first stadium sports deal. Major one, which you're going to like because it's in your state, or in our state rather, Anthony, because I'm not far from you. But
I got a feeling I know which one it was because they were doing it last year during the championship.
Well, we're going to have a pretty big deal there, and we got one just right now in a concert venue in Texas where we had Nikki Glaser. I think this week it was a big deal we did with her. So we're really targeting, you know, and I have a separate team that runs that. It's a very experienced beverage team, came out of the beverage market, came on board here, and they're running that business. It's still integrated within Curaleaf, but it is a separate run revenue line. So listen, it's still very early days, but I am more convinced today that this is not going to get rolled back in these states because the beverage lobby is very powerful. So even those states that have tried to roll it back, lawsuits have brought it back. The only one that hasn't brought it back yet is Arizona. I think they will. But every other state that's tried to roll back, specifically beverage. By the way, Anthony, I do believe that flower has a risk to get rolled back. So I'm going to be very opportunistic in that part of the business. Notice I didn't mention vape because we still haven't figured out a supply chain that would be compliant in vape because everybody uses these crazy synthetics and stuff like that, which we won't do. It has to be pure hemp oil. So, which, by the way, we can use our ACE technology for, because we can take hemp and create absolutely pure D9 product. And we might do that even on an industrial scale, not only for us, but we may even set up a separate arm that does it on behalf of the whole industry because our technology is literally the best there is in extracting. I can buy hemp that's got pesticides, that's practically rotting, anything, and I can convert it to absolutely pure oil. I can do the same thing with cannabis. I can buy, in California, I can buy all the garbage that's got pesticides in it, and I can clean it to zero carcinogens. Literally zero, the absolute purest oil. And that's what this technology, listen, took 10 years and $15 million, but we were able to build it, and it's now operational. So far in 3 states, we're about to roll it out. It's an expensive piece of equipment, and so we're being very judicious as to what markets we're going into to make sure that it can pay for itself.
Well, this hemp approach, this is all part, I assume, of the revamp of Florida and this market and the marketing strategy behind it, right?
It's all part of, listen, everything we're doing is part of that, and we're very focused on the numbers. We're very focused on margin. We're very focused, and the main focus is on excellence, right? Yeah. Steve Jobs always said, if you make the right product, you don't even have to market it. People will come for it. So you just have to be excellent at what you do. And I think that Curaleaf lost its way a little bit in the middle there. We started out good when we grew too fast, and we lost our way on quality. And now we're back, and I think we're back very strong. And I think you're going to see, just like you did in the first quarter, you're going to see continued improvements. And now what we really need is also we got to return to growth, right? And I think my view is, listen, no guarantees, but I think we saw, unless the world falls out of bed, I think we saw the bottom for at least my company in the first quarter in terms of revenue. And I think we're off to the races.
Boris, I got to ask you, every time we talk to you, it's like drinking of a fire hose when it comes to ideas that you share with us. What do you think is your strongest trait, being a CEO of a publicly traded company? Because, in these times you got to pivot. But when you talk about what you're doing in Florida right now, it's an incredible approach. And I'm assuming you're getting a lot of positive feedback. What do you think your strongest trait as a CEO?
You got to hire the right people, Chad. And all of business is about people. Now, AI is changing that. Like in Europe, we use a lot of AI because of medical business. But and my other businesses that I own are also insurance sales are all very AI driven. But in this business in particular, and even there you need people, right, to write the stuff. But here it's about people. And I have probably fired, I don't know, a couple of 100 people since I started, and I've been replacing them, and I've been bringing a combination of cannabis people and consumer product experts in their field. So in the next 2 weeks, you will hear about 5 major appointments at Curaleaf.
Interesting.
In the area of assortment and merchandising. We hired a guy from Whole Foods. In digital, which we're going to go big in. I'm building the digital store of the future that we hired in from one of the top, just joined today, so I can't really, I'll announce it a little later. We brought in the head of brand marketing from one of the top companies. And we've also brought in, which I hope someday will be my replacement, a president of the ran a $40 billion revenue retail business in the U.S. So very senior person, has an attachment to cannabis from a personal experience and stuff, and really wanted to get into this field and move the needle. A lot of these executives that come on board, they come from bigger companies. They say it's true. You can work your whole life there, and you might move the numbers by half a basis point. It's hard. When you come into a company like this, you could really change things, and it's really fun and interesting. And you got to hire the right people. And that's, I think, what I try to do is I hire people that are much smarter than me, that understand the subject matter, and then I lead them. And that's what I try to do.
It's nice to see an Anthony. We talked about this a couple of weeks ago with Anthony Cogniglio. So if you're going to bring on that kind of talent with that kind of background, they need to see opportunity. And some people are a little skeptical to say, like, where is this industry going? Is there still opportunity? But it seems like clearly, if they're taking these kinds of opportunities to work with you and look at the industry as a whole, there's some brighter days ahead for the industry, is there not?
There is, Shad, and I think that the industry, by the way, is still making massive progress. What's failed is the capital market.
Yeah, I get it.
And that's failed not because of the companies, but it's failed because of regulation in the U.S., right? And that's really the problem. And what's interesting about that is when you talk to these executives, when you're trying to bring them in, they don't see the capital. They see the capital market as an opportunity because they're getting stock at a very cheap price. And they're saying, Jesus, just look at beverage. I saw the previous, the CEO of Organigram that you had on. Her number's really low on beverage. I'm telling you right now. It's like over $1 billion in just Minnesota. Okay. So this line, this category is going to be massive in the U.S. And they see it. So you talk to people from beverage, they look at it and they're currently running. Like I hired a guy that was running a major brand in beverage. And he came here and he wanted to do this. And he was starting from zero. But he said, Boris, the non-alc category and the hemp category are the fastest growing categories in the country. And they've all seen this before in, craft beers and seltzers, hard seltzers and all these. And they're like, oh my God, you have this massive opportunity to build these companies now in the United States. And that's why they're coming over. So they don't see, because we've been in this, in many ways, we're all tarnished by the history of what's happened here. And listen, It's been pretty ugly. I'm right, especially what it's done to investors. And I feel, but listen, there's no one more exposed than me, right? Taking Curaleaf aside, I've invested probably over $500 million of my own money into the sector. Okay, so let me tell you something. And then I brought in other people's money. So I am one of the most exposed individuals. So I've suffered through this thing, but I have not stopped believing in the fact that you cannot put this genie back in the bottle. Yeah. Now, maybe it's my kids that are going to enjoy the money someday rather than me, but I'm still hopeful that we're going to get the regulatory change. I think we're going to get it sooner than people think. I don't want to spend a lot of time on that. But what I'm really focused on right now is not on that. I am focused. You build a good company, investors will come. That's it.
Okay. Let's move now to the Big Apple, or should we call it the Big Asshole here today? Because there's some pretty steep licensing fees that you are pretty vocal about in calling it un-American. But this is a big price tag, to say the least. But you want to maybe emphasize a little bit on what you meant by that un-American? Yes, we read it, but maybe elaborate a little bit more and really what can come out of this?
Well, listen, I mean, it's very simple. 10 years ago, I helped write the law for the medical program in New York. This is where we started. I started it literally out of a small $1,500 office on Long Island, okay, with a bunch of guys. We started CURLF there at that time. And we're a New York-based company. We were started in New York. We're very New York-centric. And for 6 years, as the medical program was developing, we were the poster child of how to do it in New York. We had a 50% share. We worked very closely with the then regulator, the Department of Health. We had a great relationship. It was very constructive. They told us things. We gave them ideas. We worked together to build this industry. Then Cuomo gets into political trouble, and he legalizes cannabis. He thought it might save his job. He legalizes cannabis. Hochul comes in and literally hands it over to the left, the far left of the New York Assembly and administration. And they go out and they basically start to build a program, and they completely ignore us. The people that invested hundreds of millions of dollars that they asked us to do, because that was part of the condition. The condition was you have to invest this money to operate in this market. You have to have such a balance sheet to get a license in the medical market. So they come in, they do adult use, they completely ignore the ROs, the registered operators, which were the medical players, and they give out all these licenses, which I'm not against, by the way. I want you to know, I'm absolutely supportive of the card program, because every store that opens up in a card is potentially a client for me. So I am 100% supportive. But what I was not supportive of is that they completely excluded us and didn't want to put us in the program. So we then, when we realized this was real, we went and we sued. We won. Now the court never ruled, because we stopped it, because the draft ruling basically said the whole New York program is unconstitutional, has to get thrown out. That wasn't our goal. We did not want the program to be canceled. We just wanted to be in the program. So we took that ruling together with the state. We sat down, we negotiated, and we got the ROs into the program. But only 4 of the 10 ROs even went in because of these fees, because the fees were egregious. And what I said was un-American, Shad, to be clear, is anyone in New York can go get a license if you have a felony, if you are a minority, if you are, and most of these, by the way, card licenses have nothing to do with minorities. I know people from very wealthy families that put up somebody and they got these stores. So let's also not joke around. Happens everywhere. Some of them are truly social equity and they deserve it. The other ones, to be honest, is a farce. But they don't have to pay any licensing fees, nothing. They get into this market and they get to do what we want. We have to pay crazy licensing fee. And then on top of that, they allow illicit product into the program. They're not following their own rules. They said that you have to have a seed to sale program. They know it works because all the ROs are on seed to sale in New York through BioTrack. And they say, oh, we can't get the BioTrack people to implement the program. That's a lie, because they already have the program with the top 10 players that are seed to sale. We're regulated by seed to sale.
Boris, have you had conversations with the governor?
I haven't personally, but I'm working with someone that is. I think she's so mad at me. First, I sued her and I won, and now this. I mean, I'm not the most popular person with her, but and listen. It also, they poisoned everyone in the industry on me. I literally once a month, I go out and I do the hate tour. I go to everyone that hates Curaleaf because the government set them against us because we're the big bad, MSO. And I can tell you, I have opened every single account except one. And I'm still working on her. I'm going to get her too. But I work because I sat down and I explained, don't let the government divide us. We want to work together. We are better, all of us together and separate. And each and every one of them, I bring them up to our facility. I've shown them what we do. They're all like, oh my God, we sell to everyone now. But they literally tried, the government literally tried to bust us apart for their own purposes. And that's what I said was un-American. They're dividing us. They're alienating one group against another group. They're making us pay these egregious unconstitutional fees where they're not making anyone else pay them. That's just not right. And here's the thing, the straw that broke the camel's back. The money that we were supposed to pay was supposed to go to the social equity licenses to help them. Not one penny that's going to the budget. So that was a lie. Oh, we're doing this for social equities. We're going to make these big companies give money. And by the way, I might even do that. I personally fund several social equity licenses. I can tell you right now, not in New York.
Makes sense when you could wholesale to them.
Yeah, exactly.
Wow.
And what did they do? They said, no, you can't own social equity licenses. And by the way, not only that, but we're not even going to give them the money. And when they did give them the money, they gave them non-government money, not the fees that we paid, but they gave them money from Chicago Atlantic that ripped off these people, and they're all struggling right now under the debt loads. So it's, sorry, but somebody needs to speak up. I feel like, whether you support Trump or you don't support, but the one good thing that Trump did is he's allowed people to have freedom of speech again and express their views. We're not afraid anymore to express our views.
Well said.
And so that's why I said what I said. This is not fair. It's not right, and it hurts the industry. Full stop.
Do you see the New York market slowing down anytime soon in terms of growth? Because it's been on fire.
It's been on fire. It was tough for us, for instance, for the ROs that follow the rules in the first quarter. It's one of the reasons our wholesale sales were down, was because the inversion, right? The illicit product that hit the market. I mean, nobody talks about when they went into that one distributor, Omni, they had 16,500 pounds of California grown weed in their vault.
Yeah.
16,500 pounds. And that shit all hit the market in February. And of course, like, I'm sitting there, I'm looking at my guy that runs the East Coast. I'm like, what the hell's happening in New York? This is like every month we were growing. Why are our sales down 50%? So we went out there. First thing we did was we went to the stores. We looked at the menus, and hold and behold, California product at half the price that, we could grow it in New York.
Yeah, there was another article in the New York Times yesterday about a certain brand's vapes getting pulled off the shelf that were backdoor out of market.
But by the way,
vapes.
The vapes is the smallest part of the problem. It's the flower.
Interesting.
The flower is the problem. And they need to get on. Listen, their own law says we have to institute a seed to sale program, and they don't have it. Even though they require us to be seed to sale, but they don't require the hemp farmers to be seed to sale. Yeah. And all the hemp farmers are doing, and I get why they're doing this. By the way, my beef is not with the hemp farmers. My beef is with the government, because if I was a hemp farmer, I'd probably do the same thing. Yeah. They didn't give them any money to invest in their farms, to build facilities or anything like that. They can't grow high quality cannabis on these farms in New York.
No,
certainly not year round.
That's interesting. Yeah. Good point.
So all they do is they import the stuff from California, because there's no seed to sale. They put a New York stamp on it and they sell it as New York grown.
Well, that's all part of a marketing strategy to educate people. I don't know what your messaging is going to be, but this is the problem is that we understand it, but people that don't understand the space, they don't understand what the difference between quality is and what's not. But
listen, Chad, if you want to be a leader in the industry, you also have to lead on the unpopular things. You think I want to get into a fight with the governor of New York? Of course I don't. But none of the other companies except one, they're silent, but they do fund it with me. One of the big ones are involved, but nobody wants to voice it. Everybody's afraid about the backlash from the governor, all that kind of stuff. In the end of the day, if you don't do it, the program, like the ROs the MSOs would not be in New Jersey or New York if Curaleaf didn't put up a fight. You guys probably remember how New Jersey pulled my license, right? Yeah. That's because I put up a fight with them. And here as well, right? I fight for what's right. I'm not asking for any special treatment. I even am happy to pay a little bit more to help the social equity license because it's actually good for them and for me. But what I'm not happy to do is be completely discriminated against.
And why do you think you're running into all these situations in every single state? It's just our political system is that screwed up. Like, what is it?
Why do you think Donald Trump won?
Bingo.
Well, speaking of fighting with the governor, you think adult use starts to get momentum down in Florida again, potentially?
I have to take my hat off to Kim Rivers. She is a fighter. She doesn't give up, and she's a fighter, and she's got the most to win, right? Yeah. She'll be the biggest beneficiary, so I get it. Kind of like the way I'm leading in New Jersey and New York, and the way kind of GTI led and Cresco led in Illinois. We all lead in the markets where we have relationships where we're from. She leads in Florida, and she's done a terrific job. And listen, I think that DeSantis played dirty. I also think that the presidential election didn't help us in Florida because the Democrats didn't come out to vote because they knew they were going to lose.
Yeah.
So, I think we should. But don't forget, we fought the fight in Arizona years ago.
Yeah.
And we lost in the first round. And 2 years later, we came back and we won. I think she wins. And if anyone gets the credit, it's her.
Yeah, I get it.
The measly dollars that we contributed were minuscule compared to what she did. If we get it, it's because of Kim, and she's a fighter. And I think we have a pretty good chance. If she gets us on the ballot, I think we got a pretty good chance of taking it in the midterms.
Well, there you go. Great questions coming on here today. The Cole Memo's got a couple. He writes, do you still think hemp is the path for federal legalization, kind of like the backdoor entrance? Do you believe that, or do you think it is?
Yeah, I think that hemp basically took it literally. I used to say that, you can't put the genie back in the bottle. I think hemp really cemented that because look what's happening. Even the states that want to reverse it can't do it.
Yeah, you're right.
The populace wants the products, the people want the products, and the businesses want to do them. So I think, listen, we've got a lot more work to do to get the regulations we want. We're all united. Let's be honest. That's the big change from last year and the year before. We now have a pack. We got 5 players playing in it. We are all coordinating together. It's a very good concerted effort. I'm not going to go into the details of it because that's what we agreed never to do. But I can tell you that the industry is, for the first time since it was founded, working together to try and get the proper regulations passed.
I think in some ways, hemp has brought more attention to cannabis as to what they're doing right. And when we look back at this, we may look at this and say maybe it was the wrong turn down the right road, and it all works out. Hopefully that is the case. But if anything, it's brought more attention to what's going on in the cannabis industry, and really for people that are unaware how much progress it's made and the proper requirements that are met with different packaging, labeling, testing, all that sort of stuff that's implemented, and really can start to educate a mainstream crowd the difference between what's, basically tested and what's not. So,
Chad, I want to say one thing before you guys start finishing up here, is that what's most interesting is when you're so deep in the business, sometimes it's hard to elevate yourself above it and see. But if you think about it, right, just take Curaleaf as an example. In 2018, when we went public, we were doing, call it $45 to $50 million in sales.
Yeah.
And we were selling in, call it, 7 markets.
Yeah, I bet. I remember that.
We're now in, I don't know how many countries, how many markets in the United States. We're doing, close to $1.4 billion in sales. And if you rise above it, that's incredible progress in 7 years, right? It's truly, it's like, it's incredible progress. So yes, it takes time, but I remember very well, I was in the data center business, right? I got into it in 2001. I exited in 2012. It took 11 years. It was bankrupt when we got into it in 2001 after the dot-com bubble blew, and I started investing on the back of that. By the way, this is a very good entry point for cannabis. I think some of us were too early, but I think if you can imagine, if you came in now, it's a much more interesting proposition because your downside's much smaller and your upside's dramatic, and you have real companies and real assets. Back then, we were buying licenses, right?
Yeah.
But it's dramatic what's happened, right? Curaleaf, as I said, from 45 million to 1.4 billion.
I get it.
And so many different countries, and you look at the acceptance worldwide, it's incredible what's happened. And now Central America, South America, Asia, I mean, wherever you poke your finger, they're approving. And by the way, there are 2 large markets that are about to come on stream in Europe over the next 12 months, one of which I think will come on January 1st and will be the only foreign license in that market. And that's an 80 some odd million person market, one of the largest countries. And I'm going to tell you right now that this industry is not stoppable, but that doesn't mean that you can't lose money during that period of time because investment cycles are up and down. You go through difficult periods and stuff. But those that come out of this difficult period right now, those companies that have come out are going to do well. The problem is, and I'm very sorry for all the investors, including myself, that got in maybe a little bit too early. And, we got our heads handed to us because of what happened. But I'm still very, very optimistic on where this industry is going and what role this industry is going to play in our lives over the next 15 years.
Okay. So that's where questions about balance sheets and debt, you're basically saying we've got time and there's some
not only that, but I'm not worried about it, guys. I'm truly, unless there's a global meltdown in the bond markets.
Yeah.
This is not something that's keeping me up at
Fair
night.
enough.
1 minute.
Gotcha.
Getting good products and getting my sales and getting all that keeps me up. The balance sheet, we're in a good place.
Does another thing keep you up about who's going to be the quarterback for the New York Giants?
Listen, don't get me into anything New York related except the New York Knicks right now, okay? We have a slight little hope.
I'm a
little one. Otherwise, it's been pretty ugly.
Me and
don't even get me to talk about the Jets, okay? I don't even want to. I am literally thinking about, putting on the shelf a fucking 35-year support of a team that's just
there. You go.
It's almost like cannabis.
I'm a Dolphin fan. I'm a Dolphin fan, so I can commiserate with you on the ineptitudes of our football teams.
Since Bob Greasy, there's been nothing really at the Dolphins.
Correct.
We were at actually a couple of Mr. Raznick, Jason Raznick, chairman of Benzinga. He's a big Piston Detroit fan, but man, I went to one game and man, that was a great series. But kudos to the Knicks. I know they got their butts handed to them in Game 3, but there's no better place to watch a basketball game than the greatest arena in sports, which is Madison Square Gardens. But listen, appreciate the check-in, appreciate the update. Thanks for elaborating a little bit more,
guys. Thank you very much.
All right, thanks, Boris.
Thanks, Boris. By the way, Village Farms is spinning off their tomato unit finally. They're privatizing and spinning it out. They're going to be a full vertically integrated cannabis enterprise.
Nice.
Once this transaction goes through, they're going to receive $40 million in cash for the spinoff of the produce assets, and they'll retain 40% equity in Nuco that also has the produce business. But they'll no longer have exposure to the produce business within the VFF vehicle.
I see that's over $1 again, their share price.
It's around there. I think it's about $1.12.
Well, it's gone up quite a bit, I think, in the last week or so.
It's at 70 cents. It's up at 120. It's at 120 in after hours.
Wow. Nice job. Great team they have over there. I like Michael DeJulio, and I like the team that he's got in place. Very strong.
I'm assuming this is why they punted the earnings call.
There you go. And rightfully so. Good stuff. The Cole memo. Appreciate obviously the contributions. Hopefully we got those questions that you wanted to ask, which we did. And there was one other person that made a donation today that I really, really appreciate as well. And I always want to mention all of your names when you're putting money towards these. There was Cole Memo and
it's Mike Thompson. I've known Mike Thompson for about a decade.
Thank you,
now.
Arns.
Great guy. That was one of the first people in Florida pushing for medical.
Nice.
In the state of Florida. Mike's a good dude.
Well, what we get? Organigram, working smarter, not harder, getting rid of some of their legacy brands. And then obviously with CURLF, what a great idea that is in Florida with the big marketing strategy coming up. And no better way to get through to a mainstream audience than looking at products available in mainstream locations, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely. It's if Boris starts splitting his stores down the middle and opening hemp on one side,
cannabis on one side, and the other side is what was he saying?
He's creating a Chinese wall within the business. It's brilliant.
Man,
I would do the same thing. He's just got the balls to do it.
When he comes on, man, you could run through a wall. Like he just gets so energized with so many different ideas. But that's why I wanted to ask the question what his strongest traits were and what he believed. But good to see that he's investing in some good leadership outside of the cannabis space. I know that's something that you brought up a few times in the past too. So why is that important? I want people to really understand that, you know what, we are growing as an industry as a whole, and there are people outside of the cannabis space that do see this industry still very much as an opportunity. So take that as you will. All right. No, I don't know what we have scheduled for later this week. I don't know if we Michael
Bronstein on Wednesday, and we also have it's a decent guest.
Margaret Brody from
Margaret Brody. Margaret Brody's coming on to talk about organic. They just closed their financing. That was over 50% subscribed, and give us a full about face on Rubicon.
Yes. And then we got a pre-record Peter Sack from Chicago Atlantic. That's an interesting interview we always want to bring on because he's kind of like the barometer or radar as to like what is going on from a lending perspective for the overall industry, because that's what they do. And it's always good to get feedback on what we are as far as companies and where the opportunities are. And really for a lot of investors that can't get on the private side of some of these businesses, they are involved in the private side where you can get invested within their actual REIT. And we'll have him on for the latest earnings that reported last week. That's coming up this Thursday. And we're working on a few other things, including still the Welded Angelos angle. So we'll keep you posted if we get him on. And anyway, we'll have more information regarding the Village Farms angle as well. So if you want to get our takeaways, make sure to scan that QR code. We'll reach out to the team and get some feedback. So if there's any feedback that you guys want to know about that, if you haven't done so already, make sure to scan the QR code and become a Daily Baked In newsletter subscriber. And we'll have that info tomorrow morning, 8 o'clock in your inbox. And it's delivered every morning at 8 a.m., Monday through Friday. All right, that wraps things up.
It's a great move for Village Farms.
Yeah.
That produce business was a drag on the overall cannabis business.
Yeah. Wonder if hint, hint, wink, wink, that if Tilray does the exact same thing, because I know they're invested in how many farms? Don't they have one in Quebec? I thought. No?
Vegetables?
I thought so. I could be wrong. I'm almost certain that they do. And some of I think a Fria one is vegetables as well, if I'm correct. I could be wrong.
That's news to me.
I could be wrong. Don't quote me on
I don't know enough about Tilray if they have a vegetable business. Anyways,
all right. Appreciate everybody for logging on here today. Hope you got some great takeaways. And we'll see you back here on Wednesday at 4 o'clock. Oh, Angel Flies writes peppers. There you go. Thank you, Angel. Yes, Simon said they wanted to use greenhouses for cucumbers. Yep.
Shit. All right. Yeah. That's I wasn't aware of that.
Yeah. All right, everybody.
I would have included it in my rants as to why not invest in Tilray. But we'll leave it at that.
All right, we'll just end it at that. Hopefully we get some news from Donald Trump. Let's find out what this earth-shattering moment is. Maybe there's no border patrol anymore between Canada and the U.S. I hope that's the case. Finally, I can move to the U.S.
I know. Go Oilers and Panthers.
Yes, go Oilers and Panthers. All right, I'll see you back here Wednesday, okay, my friend?
I want the McJesus rematch.
You might get it. Enjoy the rest of your day, everyone. Now, that was a good one. What'd you guys all think? Did you like what we had to say here today? Do you agree, disagree with what we're saying? Love to get your feedback. As usual, leave comments below. Trade to Black is growing, and we wouldn't have done it without you. So if you haven't done so, please subscribe to our YouTube channel. You can also check us out on Apple and Spotify for the audio version. And as usual, leave lots of comments. We, as I said, love to hear back from you. Thanks again, everybody, for watching.